What is up with it? This is the Crimson Blur with a new Out of Focus. I have just moved into my new SoCal residence, so I'm happy to be back making content. And today we're talking about CRTs versus monitors, a topic that's now a hot topic on Twitter. Everyone's talking about it because Big House recently I guess they didn't announce, but people found out that they're going to have some monitors at their event, not just CRTs. If you've been following Melee people, we like our CRTs. We like our big, bulky televisions. But this event is actually going to use some monitors with adapters by Eon Gaming. These same adapters were used at Low Tier City 7. Frankly, the public reception of it was pretty poor. Some people did say they were just fine and people were making too big of a deal out of it. But there were, a notable amount of people who were upset about it. So why is Big House doing this? What is going on? What's the big deal? Why can't we just use CRTs? And why make this decision at all? I think is the big question on people's mind. And I think more generally, like, what should TOs do? What's our future proofing? And where do we go from here? So first, let me talk about the issue. What has actually happened? So Abby Sinister, who's a notable CRT advocate, posted on Twitter today that, hey, Big House is doing a mixed solution where they're going to have most of the TVs be CRTs, but some of them are going to be monitors. Sure, it's just friendly setups, but nonetheless, a lot of people use friendly setups to warm up for the tournament matches. So people are concerned that, hey, I'm going to be switching from one type of setup to another, and that might make my experience unequal, make my practice and warm up worse, things like that, right? Now, I will say that I was talked to by Big House before this, so I kind of had a good idea this was coming, and they asked me my opinion. I think if you're going to give monitors a chance in any capacity, this is the way to do it. It's much better than going full-on monitor like Low Tier City 7 did, because I think that that's much more jarring. Ultimately, people could choose if they're okay with the monitors, then it's not a big deal. If they want to be a purist, then they can stick to the CRTs. There's still a lot of them at the event. But ultimately, I think that Melee players really, really have no patience for latency. Melee is a very difficult game, and some of the things that require the hardest execution require really fast display latency, right? Like you can't have much lag at all. Things like tech chasing, you have to actually reaction. You have to respond on reaction to what you see as a visual cue on screen, so it's important. Furthermore, I think a lot of monitors don't have a great audio setup. Many monitors are just have horrible audio, and so what you have to do is actually set up like a mix amp or something like that, one of those Astro things, and connect it to the monitor to have a good solution. TOs in the past haven't done that, and that sometimes makes it even worse because now you don't have good audio and you don't have good the optimal display experience, and people can be really mad about that, right? It sucks to lose like that, or feel like that's the reason, and it can totally get in your head, even if it's just a placebo effect, right? So that's basically the context, right? People like CRTs. However, should be mentioned, the CRTs have a lot of cons to them too, right? So I just talked about very, very broad stroke reasons why people don't like monitors, but why do TOs not like CRTs? Well, first of all, CRTs are an ancient technology that, aren't, in active circulation anymore. Recycling centers are taking them out by hundreds of thousands, like every single year. If you ever go to a recycling center, you'll be shocked. It's like all CRTs, right? It's like a pile of CRTs, and they're just trying to take care of them because every household had a couple CRTs back in the day, right? And they've been gradually being destroyed and given away over time. One thing that we did to stave this off was I started something called the Smash Vault Project. We made a big vault out in SoCal and then tried to make a bunch of other vaults in other regions. Toronto made one. I know the UK has a really big one. Basically every little region started making little vaults, right, of TVs, which then got shipped to tournaments. That was like our stopgap solution. That solution was really necessary because it what we found was we did like research that Craigslist postings of CRTs were declining. So we went on, we did a little script of like literally scraping how often is Craigslist posting new CRTs, and we found that it was becoming less and less with time, which makes sense. There's less CRTs out there, so less people are giving them away. This makes sourcing CRTs really difficult. So when you're trying to get a CRT, usually you actually have to go to individual people, like on Craigslist, on Facebook Marketplace, something like that, and pick one up, right? That's actually what you have to do. And so when we made the vaults, what we actually did was we sent out smashers by the droves to pick them up. They put them in their car, and then they brought the TVs to us, and then we paid the smasher for their time, right? That was actually the system. We were like, hey guys, everyone, when you see a new posting about a CRT, just pick it up, bring it to us, and we're gonna maintain this big vault. Now, a lot of those vaults still exist. It's been like a 7-8 year project. It's been very successful, made some good locals out of it too. But it's tough to maintain them, right? And I honestly think a lot of the vaults are a lot weaker right now than times in the past. People like me and others, like either, not really been a part of it or like not super maintained it. But also just like storing that many CRTs has been so hard. What we did in SoCal is Red Bull helped out for a few years. They stored a bunch of them and shipped around to tournaments. Thank you, Red Bull, for doing that for so long. Then we put them in Esports Arena. And then I think like 2GG took some of them. And then like it got scattered around and it became tougher and tougher to find a decent storage solution for all the TVs. Also, there's so much breakage, right? So you put these TVs on pallets and then you wrap them, right? That's like the way you're supposed to put it on a truck, right? But they'd still break. So basically there's magnets on a lot of CRTs behind the screen, and that's usually how the breakage happens. So if you ever see like color distortion on a CRT where like the top corners or whatever look bad, that's because that magnet isn't good. One thing you can do is you can actually demagnetize it. You put a little magnet over the monitor, and that makes it a little bit better. That's one of our good maintenance solutions. But that wasn't the only issue, right? Another common one was the power cord would snap. And that sounds like an easy fix, but actually fixing CRTs is so hard. It's actually much easier to source a new CRT than to fix one. So even though over time we learned how to fix CRTs, it would just take longer. You'd have to order like weird parts, like you probably couldn't find them often. And in general, it just wasn't worth the time because you can go and pick up a new CRT off Craigslist for like $15, right? So in general, you end up just throwing them away. Disposing them is an issue. It's not fun to dispose of a CRT. It's not easy. Sometimes you have to actually go to the recycling center depending on your state and things like that. So that's a huge problem. And also truck limitations, right? CRTs are really heavy. So if you're trying to get 32 setups to a tournament, not so bad. But if you're trying to get to 128, you actually have to do 2 trucks, 2 big trucks to get that going. If you're trying to go higher than 128, yeah, you're going to have a real issue, right? Because you have to have even more trucks. And that increases the amount of shipping costs you have to deal with. It's not pretty. Okay, so these are actually like humongous issues, right? Like these cannot be understated. The logistical issues do exist. We have done an extremely good job of dealing with it anyway, right? Because we're smashers, we're trying to make it happen. But they're problems, right? I will say for a fact that if we do go to monitors, it is going to be possible to have more setups at events, right? Because you don't have to do like 2-3 trucks. You could do with 1 truck, you can have 200 monitors fit just fine because you're just smaller, right? That size difference is actually that big of a deal. It especially doesn't help, by the way, that CRTs, stacking them on top of each other increases their breakage rate, right? Because they're so heavy that when you put CRTs on top of each other and stack them like that, the one on the bottom has so much pressure on it, right? And so it's not great. The bump, when you have a bumpy road also, like if you're driving that U-Haul, and I've driven a few U-Hauls full of CRTs, you're worried about it the whole time because they actually are literally jumping up and down and harming themselves the whole way. So yeah, CRTs break. and you put a monitor in a box and it usually doesn't. So that's nice. So these are big issues. And certainly, I think it's undeniable. I think everyone will agree that at some point, we're going to have to move away from CRTs just because they're all going to break and we can't source them anymore. There's nothing we can do. So this is an issue that's going to happen someday. But the question is, and I think this is what most CRT supporters would say, is not today, right? When is that, and what's our actual timeline here? I'd say, and I said this a few years ago, I'd say we're actually coming up to it now. We honestly are. It's within 4 to 5 year problem of like genuinely we can't do this anymore. So this is going to be a bigger and bigger problem with time. And it's not something that's going to solve itself. It's something we're going to have to face. So if you guys want to have some reading for why we care so much about CRTs, I recommend reading this Cardano post, which does a lot of good tests. I think he uses a oscilloscope or whatever to measure the display lag. He comes out with, I think, like 5 milliseconds, which sounds about right. It's about like a third of a frame. So I say that's significant. That's not something you want to compromise on, but nonetheless, that's a good read. I also recommend this post by Abby Sinister, where he breaks down, how gameplay is affected by lag, why it matters, things like that. You're going to deal with a 4 to 6 millisecond amount of lag on a monitor. But more importantly, I think the motion blur and the variance and lack of consistency of monitors is really the bigger issue. I think the display lag, of course, really matters, especially for like the Sheiks and Falcons of the world, who really require their reactions. But monitors just feel different. I do think netplay has helped in this because I think more Melee has been played on monitors than on CRTs. So many people actually are more used to monitors nowadays, especially the newer generation, in playing their Melee at home. But nonetheless, I think like just the visual differences are important. No scan lines, things like that matter. So that's a big deal. And audio's really got to be solved, right? Audio is, the fact that so many monitors just have horrible audio. And TOs have to do better. If you're going to do monitors, you have to have an audio solution so people can hear and plug in their headphones. Like, it is unacceptable to do any other way. Like, you cannot have a tournament without audio. Like, it's insane. We're a competitive tournament. I know we're poor, but we're not that poor. Those pieces of equipment are not that expensive. Anyway, another good article is this Fizzy article, which talks about it. I'm going to include all these articles down in the description for you guys to read. But people are freaking out. And actually, I do like the humor around it. Ziff made a tweet that I particularly liked. The year 2025, all Melee tournaments are run on Eon HDMI adapters. Matches are played on CRT are not even recognized by MIOM. You knock on undescript home's front door, unsure if you'll be safe. A man leads you into a basement. Welcome to the Resistance. And I think what's best about this is, of course, just like every good tournament, it has the Disney, or is that the Barbie TV in the back. That's so sick. So like, I don't know, ultimately this is something we're going to have to do. I personally think that there's no need to make this like a mountain out of a molehill for Big House. I think, look, it's like, what is it? Like a third of their setups are going to be monitors. That's important. But look, man, someone's got to innovate here. Like, this is going to be an issue. And I do think it's gonna be an issue in the near term. Our vaults are just not as strong as they used to be. Unless someone wants to go out and like rekindle some of the vaults around the country, and around the world, we're gonna have this problem, right? And realistically, like that won't save it off for very long, right? We are looking at the CRT apocalypse pretty soon. And so, yeah, it is something that I think ultimately we might have to do. I think what's tough too is that the clear answer is, why not just get like a Raspberry Pi, one of those little small baby computers, and play Dolphin off of it and play faster Melee on a monitor, and therefore like cut out some lag. think that's some of it. It's still not going to be perfect. Like even that doesn't really solve it, because really what most of the lag comes from is not from the digital conversion, the analog to digital conversion, but from actually monitors being monitors, right? Like that's actually where most of it comes from. They just generally have more display lag than a cathode ray tube, right? So that doesn't really solve it. Even still, that solution wouldn't even really work, even with faster melee. Like TOs are just not going to do it, right? Like there's we can't get them to do UCF, right? So we're not going to get them to do that for sure. Running Dolphin at their events, it's just not going to happen. So what's the other world, right? We stick to CRTs till it all goes away, like till our dying days. Like how long does that realistically last? What is the timetable on that? I think the most optimistic scenario is actually 5 years. I really do think it's that soon. And so for that, like, shouldn't we be dipping our toes in? Shouldn't we be giving companies like Eon the time of day, to be looking at it? And I'm like the staunchest CRT guy. I'm literally, so many memes are made about my TV, right? Like, I'm as staunch as it comes, but like, I understand the perspective, right? Like, I've been on the TO side and saying like, dude, I don't want to order 3 trucks. I don't want to order 4 trucks. And I think like, if the trade-off we get is truly more setups, that would have to be a big trade-off, is truly more setups. Like, okay, we go to monitors, it sucks, but it's something we have to do. But instead of 128 setups, we start having closer to 200. I think that starts to be like, ooh, maybe that's worth it, right? Because then, you can genuinely fit more. And look, if we get some sponsorships out of it, if we get some ACES sponsorships, we get some, other monitor sponsorships, Eon throws in some stuff, that's nice. We'll take it, right? Like, it's Smash Brothers. We got to take what we can get. So, I think that's part of it too. That consideration. I don't think it's honestly a big consideration. I think most people assume, they're doing it for some sponsorship reasons. They're not. Smash TOs are not doing sales like that to any degree to change their competitive tournament for anything like that. But it's true that the BenQs and Aces of the world will give your tournament setups if you put their logo on their stream, and Smash TOs will gladly do that, right? So that's another pro for monitors. So yeah, I get it. I just feel like if you're gonna do it, you need good audio, and you better have more setups as a result. Like ultimately, we would prefer CRTs, and everyone knows that. But can't always get what you want, and so let's do it this way. And I think what Big House is doing is smart. Do a transitional period, right? Like, and make that transition a pretty long period, right? This should be like a multi-year thing if it's gonna happen. Like, don't just do, okay, we dip our toe in the water with a few friendly setups and let's immediately turn all of our tournaments into monitors in the following year. No, like, take your time with it. Let players adjust. Let players get used to it and get feedback. Iterate on that feedback, and then finally, when you feel like it's good enough for a true competitive set, is when you hit main stage with it, and you hit the actual finals with that setup, and you try to go for it. So yeah, ultimately, it's a tough issue, right? Like, our game's so old, we have to take it on. But for me, in my perspective, I think Big House is being pretty brave to do this. They don't have to do this by any means, like to be the innovator on this. So I respect them for that. I kind of want us to stay on CRTs until like we're really at the brink, and I don't think we're quite there, but we're close enough that I gotta respect someone trying to make a transition process like this. So ultimately, I hope people aren't too hard on Rob and the Big House team. They're one of the few TOs that actually care about the scene. So. Of the big tournaments. So I really do think they're doing this because they think that this is where it's going to have to be in 5 years. So might as well give it a shot. So yeah, that's my opinion. If you guys have any questions, look at the comments. Hope you enjoyed, and check out my stream at twitch.tv/thecrimsonblur. Peace out, guys.